Good afternoon and welcome to this joint public meeting of the Executive Committee and the Compensation Subcommittee of the University of Pittsburgh Board of Trustees. Seeing as we have a quorum present, I will call today's meeting to order. This meeting has been duly advertised as a public meeting in accordance with the Sunshine Act and is therefore open to members of the public as observers. Actual participation in the meeting is limited to members of the committee and the subcommittee, and to those invited in advance to take part. The meeting is being streamed on YouTube, the university's YouTube channel, and is also being recorded. The recording will be made available via the Board of Trustees website after the meeting. Before diving into our first meeting, we have two housekeeping items. First, I'll ask that the minutes of the meeting reflect that on July 9th, 2025, August 7th, 2025, and November 21st of 2025, the Compensation Subcommittee met in executive session as permitted by the Sunshine Act to discuss matters associated with the performance and compensation of university officers. Second, I'd ask that the minutes further reflect that the Executive Committee met in executive session on August 8th, 2025 and December 9th, 2025, as permitted by the Sunshine Act to discuss matters associated with the performance and compensation of university officers. So with that preamble, I would like to ask that the minutes of the joint public meeting on December 16th, 2024, that were circulated in advance of today's meeting and were included in your meeting materials be moved for approval. May I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
Are there any comments and or corrections? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Thank you. The minutes are approved. Today is a significant day as we complete the final project of our governance review that began over 2.5 years ago. When we recruited and hired Chancellor Gable, a key deliverable desired by this board was a robust strategic plan with associated KPIs to measure our performance against annually and multi-year goals. Chancellor Gable has delivered. In the first year, the university community came together and we adopted the plan for Pitt 2028. Included as part of the plan is the progress card addressing the board's desires for KPIs. Following the adoption of the plan for Pitt, Chancellor Gable aligned those goals and objectives with her leadership team and with the plan. Each fall, we review the chancellor and officer performance for the prior fiscal year. As such, this marks the first review of their performance against the plan for Pitt. I'm pleased to share that in the face of great adversity, the chancellor and her team have met their year one objectives. In September, the chancellor publicly shared the university's accomplishments through her annual report. Let me recap just a few highlights from fiscal year 2025. 1, record applicants. A Pitt degree has never been in higher demand than it is today. 2, record research expenditures and record invention disclosures. There has never been more discovery at the University of Pittsburgh. 3, record graduation rates best-in-class postgraduate placement. 96% of our undergraduates are working full-time or enrolled in graduate school 6 months after their graduation. That is incredible and flies in the face of what is much and often heard in the public. And thanks to our generous alumni, friends, and partners, we celebrated our 4th consecutive year with over $200 million in philanthropic gifts and commitments. Why does it matter? These accomplishments and more help underpin our ability to continue growing what is a $6.6 billion economic impact on the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. With that framing, I'll transition to our action items for today. As is our process, the Compensation Subcommittee is charged with recommending items relating to compensation to the Executive Committee for review and consideration. Our first item is an Executive Subcommittee resolution recommending the Executive Committee take 3 actions. The first action is adoption of the officer compensation philosophy. When the Board of Trustees adopted our revised bylaws and new committee charters in June of 2024, the former policy on executive compensation was rendered null and void. Based on input from a third-party compensation consultant, we are recommending adoption of an updated document included in your materials as Appendix A. The second action, recommends amendments to the Chancellor's employment agreement. It's hard to believe, but Chancellor Gable was appointed nearly 3 years ago in April of 2023. At that time, the compensation approved her initial compensation based on benchmarking and a compensation study commissioned by the board. Since that initial compensation study, there has been significant turnover among peer chief executives at AAU institutions. In fact, nearly 60% of chancellors for AAU public and private institutions have turned over within that short period of time. And as we speak, there are 10 active searches going on for chancellors. Such a high turnover rate has driven increases in the executive compensation market through new contracts and retention efforts. The Compensation Committee has received an updated compensation study from our third-party compensation consultant and determined that the Chancellor's compensation is no longer aligned with the pay positioning intended by the officer compensation philosophy. Further, we recognize the tremendous momentum that the University of Pittsburgh is experiencing and want to ensure leadership continuity to sustain our upward trajectory. Therefore, we recommend, based on a competitive market analysis, that the Executive Committee increase the Chancellor's base pay to $1.25 million per year, effective January 1st, 2026. Further, we recommend 3 tools to incentivize retention. Extension of the annual retention payments through 2030 and increasing these payments from $100,000 per year to $150,000 in 2028 and $200,000 in 2029 and 2030. Increasing the annual deferred compensation contribution to $500,000 per year, vesting in 2030. Adding an incentive compensation component as a potential component of compensation in the future. Approval of these changes would reposition the chancellor's compensation back at or around the median of the peer group. The median. Finally, the third action recommended pertains to the compensation of the non-trustee officers in calendar year 2026. After discussing their individual performance with Chancellor Gable in an executive session, we recommend the following: a 2.5% merit-based salary increase, a 15% market adjustment for the provost and senior vice chancellor, inclusive of the aforementioned merit increase, and the addition of a $50,000 per year deferred compensation program vesting in 2030. And last, a one-time $30,000 performance incentive for the secretary of the board. All of these materials and resolutions have been circulated and are in your materials. And at this time, I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution recommending these actions to the executive committee for review and consideration. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
John, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
How do we rank after if what this vote? How do we rank with the other two universities closer to our size that are state related in Pennsylvania, specifically Penn State and Temple?
Thank you for that question, Trustee Lieberman. Let me first say that our compensation consultant and review arrived at a peer group by which we benchmark our activities that included 33 AAU university members. And we included both Temple, to whom you refer, and Penn State in that information. First, the recommended compensation for the chancellor will have her total compensation and remuneration in the range of 50 to 60 percentile overall. In the case of the two institutions for which you mentioned, I believe that the president of Penn State, Ms. Ben-Panuti, is at a higher percentile than our chancellor. In fact, substantially somewhere in the neighborhood of 25% more. Mr. Fry, who heads Temple University, we are not certain of, as they have not publicly disclosed that information. And to date, that Form 990 that involves his compensation, the Form 990 with the IRS that requires that disclosure, has not yet been made public. So we are not certain as to the compensation of President Fry. Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none, I'm sorry, I see Trustee Verischetti. Please, Pete.
Thank you, Chairperson Verbanek. As a follow-up to Trustee Lieberman's question, you cited that 33 different institutions were used, to compare Pitt against as far as compensation packages. Can you share the criteria that was used to determine those different institutions?
I can indeed. Much of the work that the compensation subcommittee engaged in involved defining that peer group, because it sets a very important baseline for the analysis. In the end, we arrived at several clearly understandable criteria. The first was that you were a member of the AAU. The second was that you were an institution that had extremely high research activity. In fact, we set that bar at $750 million per year. The third was that you offered a medical degree, reflecting our health sciences, our involvement, time, engagement with the UPMC and like institutions around the country. The next was that they were a member of a Power Four conference, where possible, reflecting that component of university life. And last, we added a number that are direct competitors to the university for both students and faculty, thus bringing in schools like Temple or CMU into that peer group. So we arrived at those 33. We compiled base compensation information, non-cash compensation information, total remuneration, and compared what actions we are taking today against that entire peer group, resulting in an overall package that will place our chancellor within the 50 to 60th percentile. And as you know, we have worked to adopt and develop a new compensation philosophy for the university, which strives for us to compensate our covered officers between the 25th and 75th percentile of our peer group marketplace.
Thank you
Last,
very much.
I would simply add that our consultants have also issued, with regard to all covered officers that we're addressing today, an opinion as to conformity. So I think that's important for everybody to know as well. With that, I had asked for a motion and a second, and that was for the subcommittee. Because we are recommending as a compensation subcommittee to the executive committee in just a moment. And I do believe we had both a first from Trustee Lieberman, who is a comp subcommittee member, and a second from Trustee Claggett, who is a subcommittee member. So with that, is there any further discussion before I ask for a vote? Okay, all those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. The motion is carried. We are now going to turn ourselves to the executive committee resolution for approval. I would now ask for a motion by the executive committee to approve the recommendations advanced by the compensation subcommittee. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
I'll abstain, Mr. Chair.
Duly noted. The motion carries. So with that, on behalf of the Board of Trustees, I want to offer my sincere thanks to Chancellor Gable and to the officers for a very successful 2025 in the face of great adversity. You've helped the university achieve significant accomplishments, measurable accomplishments, accomplishments that are reflected in the performance evaluation, reviews, and actions that we've taken today in the plan for Pitt 2028 that is available for everyone. A Pitt university degree has never been in higher demand than it is today. You have all helped us to achieve that and face these challenges successfully. We are grateful. With that, there being no additional business to come before the Executive Committee or the Compensation Committee, we stand adjourned. Thank you all. Happy holidays.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.